and FaceTime Live, letting this thing ramp up. I'm excited about today's topic.
Yeah, security is so important.
Well, communication is important. It's just kind of ironically not as much fun to talk about. And Jeff, I think the reason that I'm so excited to talk about security is it kind of relates to the COVID-19 thing, right? Where if you look at anything being pushed out or any of the social media, you hear all about it, but you may not know anybody directly impacted, right? But on our side of the fence, we get the phone calls and the text messages from individuals when they've had a breach or somebody's stolen their identity. We get the calls from companies when the same things happen to them. And then we have the inside data track. We know that this has changed from these high-level hackers like at Target to these groups understanding they can create malicious software and sell it. So it's software as a service. Anybody can buy malicious attacks now, and they can just unleash them on the world, which is why we're seeing such an uptick, right?
Well, and you got people all over the place who, we're accustomed to having conversations with our doctor in a room with a closed door, and now we're having those conversations on video chat over the internet. What are the security implications for stuff like that?
Right. And that's what we want to talk about today. We really want you guys to know there are really serious threats out there. It takes only moments for some really untrustworthy individuals to take complete advantage of you and your company. And things are made worse when people work from home, right?
Right.
So some of the pitfalls of sending people home, and the first one that we're concerned about at Newave is they jump out of our real pretty environment with the computers we've set up with our agents and our antivirus, and they go home and try to get on a home machine because they can access cloud-based products. So what are the issues with working on a machine at home?
Yeah, well, we use these words and they mean a lot to us and they may not mean as much to everybody else, but a fully managed machine for us is a machine that has antivirus that's monitored and updated. If there's something going wrong with the antivirus, we get notification. We're on top of that. Same thing with updates. They are managed updates. If an update fails, we get an alert, the update's failed. So when there's a security flaw, Microsoft puts out a patch to close that hole. All of that patching and monitoring that process matters for your overall security posture. So we feel great about the agents and the antivirus and all that on the work machines, the fully managed machines. Whereas at home, you don't have that, and your machine is maybe updates are turned on and you're getting patches, but they're not being forced down your throat, and they're not as likely to be telling you or notifying somebody else if something's not working correctly. And those vulnerabilities, once they're discovered, they're published in the wild, is what they say, and they're available for bad guys to use. And so when you go home and we help you set up a VPN connection so you can get to your data at the office, that VPN connection opens up that vulnerability from your PC at home to the office environment. And that's a huge concern.
Yeah. So what do you need to know? If you go home, it's best to use your work computer with all the security tools your company or your IT resources put on it. If you do grab a personal device, you need to properly equip it. So get a hold of your IT professional and get those agents and the tools put on it. As a minimum at Newave, what we tell everybody, we have a security partner called Sophos, and they have a Sophos free product for residential. And we make them, if we're going to allow them to connect to anything at the office, have a minimum of that Sophos free agent. And once we know those tools are in place on the machine, we can set up, again, a accredited VPN connection. If you're working as some of these people work and they may grab their spouse's computer and they're solo. There's no big company there. So I get asked all the time about VPNs. Should I have a VPN? So yes, but what I want to caution you with on the VPNs is really do your research, and we can publish some of these. I know some credible VPN companies. They're large. They have a full security set on the VPN they're offering, and they also have in their terms and conditions, they don't keep or monitor any of the traffic or what you're doing. That's a big thing because those companies can resell that data, right? And now we're doing nobody any good. What I want to caution you on the VPN side is people continue to think that if they have a VPN, they're secure. A VPN, an encrypted connection out the internet, is only one part of security, right? So if I'm at home, I also need to be mindful that, just like you said, if I grab a computer and I haven't run Microsoft or any of my application updates in a long, long time, guys, the past versions of all that software are published online, and it shows the vulnerability right into your device. So I have to get things up to date. Same thing for the modem with the internet provider. We talked about that with Cox earlier.
Right. Kellen likes to talk about home security appliances. A big part of our security package are firewalls. We install commercial firewalls at business offices and locations, and that is a very important part of perimeter defense for any business. You probably don't have the same kind of firewall at home. A lot of people have a modem provided by their internet provider, and they may have a modem that's 6, 7, 8 years old that may not be updated at all. There may be some really old vulnerabilities in the router that you have at home that is letting people into the computers on your network at home.
Right. And so, I mean, at a bare minimum, what I think about modems in general, one, you need to know they're not a security device. Even if your internet provider says, hey, this does some security, it's not a great security device. That's why there's security devices for sale. Two, make sure, call your internet provider if you're going to work from home for a while or in the future, and make sure your modem is up to date and all the updates are up to date on it. So important. It can also improve your speed on that modem.
Oh, yeah.
And then look into getting a router with some security permissions on it as well, and keep those things updated. I mean, make a monthly reminder to look for updates on all your devices, because that closes the holes and vulnerabilities that are published out on the internet for the bad guys to find.
Yeah, it made me chuckle when you said speed up. You need to know what you're paying for. If you're paying for 50 megs, 50 meg down on your connection at home, run a speed test. You can just Google speed test, and it'll give you a fairly good speed test. If you're paying for 50 and you're getting 10, then that's a problem, and you need to call your ISP. It's a service that you're paying for. You're paying for a specific amount of bandwidth. And we've seen that happen a number of times where they went ahead and shipped out a new device, and look at that, now I'm getting 50, or I'm paying for 50 and I'm getting 70. You really shouldn't be getting a lot less than what you're paying for.
Right. It should come through. You mentioned this. Were you the one that told me? So there's some, if I Google speed test, there's some that are biased. They're in cahoots with the internet provider. What speed test link do you use?
I from the search bar, I type in speed space test, and there's one that comes to the top of the list all the time, and I think it's actually by Google, and I've found that to be pretty reliable. For years, I used speedtest.net, and that also I think is a good one. But one good test, I guess, is if you run it several times and you get different results every time you run it, try a different one. See, your connection shouldn't vary from one test to the next. If you wait 2 or 3 minutes and you get a big difference in your speed test, that may be an indication that there's actually something wrong with your internet connection.
Perfect. So I want to kind of pivot, because we are on the home device. So we're on a computer at home, and what all the managers, business owners need to realize is, because people are at home, they have home habits. Our searching is going to be different than if we were sitting in an office with somebody next to us kind of monitoring what we're doing. So now we are mixing business with personal. So we've got to watch out for that. I want to jump into data in general. We access sensitive data and making sure we're covering our trail and we're getting rid of it. Jeff, you brought this to my attention, but there's multiple links, and you guys have seen this. When you put a username and password in for the first time on a computer for one of your sites, it asks to keep that with a checkbox. Don't ever check that box, because if somebody gets access to your computer, they can get into all of your accounts very quickly. But Google's a big problem when it comes to this, right?
Right. They want to make it easy for you. Everybody wants everything to be easy. And so when you put in those credentials, it automatically asks for permission to store those credentials. And you say yes. Next time you go to that address, it'll autofill that for you. You just click log in, boom, you're right in there. And it's very convenient. It's a great feature, but it stores that in the settings in your browser. And if you log into some other computer, it will copy those settings onto that computer too. And if you actually take the time to dig into there, I have mine open on my computer right now, and I am aware of this, and I have been removing things from this password list that Google keeps. I have 212 sites with stored passwords in Google. And you need to be aware of that and do some research on that and think about what a security risk it is, because you're logging into your bank site, maybe an investment site. You have some things in there that you don't want bad guys and people out there in the general internet to have access to, and it may not be that difficult for them to get. So there are a lot of things like that that pose a substantial threat.
There's too much out there.
There's too much out there.
Yeah, but Google's keeping information, so get into your settings and delete it. I had a question here from Megan. It's a good segue too. It says, in what ways are hackers targeting work from home individuals right now? Great question. So here's what you have to know, and I know that everybody's seen this because I've had a lot of conversations on social media about it. Everybody you've ever talked to is sending you email campaigns right now. They're doing what we're doing, these FaceTime lives and webinars. There's more digital interaction than ever because everybody's stuck at home, and that's how they're trying to keep sales going. So we're flooded with information more than we already were. What you have to watch out for, and Megan, to answer your question, is in all this mass information, cyber criminals are sneaking in malicious emails. It's called phishing. They're sending you emails about your local government coming out with some kind of update. I saw one. It was actually, did you know there's a cure for COVID?
Of course,
certified cure. And I went through it, and it had really good data in it. Like it sounded great, but if I hovered over who it was sent from, it was a phishing email. They wanted me to click on the information for more, and it had malicious software embedded. So you have to be careful. Your local, so your city, your state, and the federal government are all sending out information. These cyber criminals are posing as all those entities as well. And what I've seen most recently, and what we all care about, where's my money, right? Businesses and personal. You got the PPP, and you've got your $1,200 and $500 a kid payments, your stimulus payments, right? There are several emails coming out posing as stimulus information, or you need to fill out this form so we can finalize your stimulus information. Listen, as a person at home, you don't need to do anything. The government's not going to ask you for any information. They have everything they need for your stimulus payment. This is also coming in the form of phone calls, and be careful on social media. Everything I just talked about has popped up on Twitter and on Facebook, and I've seen a text message as well with a link for additional information. Here's the cure. Here's a better way and a faster way to get your payment. It's all false. So you've got to really verify the source. Now let's talk about, Megan, the other way that they're getting you. These cyber criminals are actually buying ads for keywords. So when you Google coronavirus, if you go look for a coronavirus map, one of the ads has malicious software embedded in it. You actually need to go to the official CDC website if you want to see the real map. And a lot of people have shared, there was a couple credible news sources that grabbed the wrong map with the malicious software in it and shared it in one of their articles. People are clicking on these. So, right now, you guys really need to be getting all your information directly from the CDC or from the government site. Don't go clicking on links, because these cyber criminals are having a heyday just taking money from people.
It is not difficult, and it is not expensive to stand up a website. So in some cases you have moral, well-meaning people creating websites to put information out there, but they haven't perhaps spent the money or engaged the experts to make sure that their sites are secure. So the bad guys come along, they find this site that somebody stood up that doesn't have all the necessary security precautions, and they've attached their back-end stuff onto that website. You just you click the link, you go to the site, and boom, you just got infected. And so it wasn't because the person who put the information out there was bad or designed it for that. It's just that they didn't have security in place. They created an opening that you walked through.
Yeah, the stats last year were 80% of all small business websites had malware, which is just a general term for malicious software embedded in the website, and they didn't have the tools to tell them that they had an infection. So you go to that website, like you said, and get an infection.
The one that I've run into the most is, and the bad guys know that if they can convince you that they're just trying to help you, that they get more success. And so I've personally helped a couple of people who the pop-up came up on their screen that said, you have this many problems. And one of them, it was, you have these many viruses. And the other one was, there's problems with your operating system. We're Microsoft. We want to help you. And so these people were persuaded to click on links. Actually, one of them made a phone call, spent an hour and a half on the phone talking to somebody, and eventually surrendered credit card information and paid $249 for stuff. And they, an hour and a half of their time, $249 of their money, and they didn't do anything now. And whether or not they harvested data off their PC, I don't know, or if they were just after the $249. Now, they were able through their credit card company to get the charges reversed, but the the things that pop up on your screen, if you didn't initiate that and something came up on your screen, you should just turn the thing off. Turn the thing off with the power button. Hold the power button down until it shuts off. Turn it back on, and hopefully it won't come back up there again. And if you're doing something, you initiate a connection and something pops up and asks you for permission, then you've got a pretty good idea why that's there. But if something just comes up and announces something to you, and I'd be afraid of that every time.
Yeah. And if it happens again, once you turn the computer back on, call a professional.
Call somebody.
We have some tools that we can run in the background of the computer to make sure nothing malicious is sitting on the machine. And then these companies, especially with Windows 10, are doing such a great job of burying in settings how you have to turn off all the pop-ups. It's ridiculous. We know how to turn those off as well. So I want to pivot to one more category when it comes to security. Everybody's doing video conferencing. I actually had a couple buddies text me and said, hey, are you going to cover the Zoom thing? We're going to cover the Zoom thing. So Zoom has been the easiest platform for people to pivot to fairly quickly. The government's really loosened regulations to allow people to use this stuff quickly because the pandemic came on so quickly. Here's the problem. Zoom had a hack that nobody knew about, and they had tons of harvested credentials and information. So if you've been using Zoom, and I don't know how deep it went, they haven't published yet how deep the hack went, but they got into Zoom and got usernames, passwords, your personal little ID when you use your Zoom account. Go into Zoom, reset up a brand new password, and lock the suckers out that got your information. That's everybody freaks out. Go, what do I do now? That's what you do. You go back into the application and set it up. And this happens all the time. When I do security training, people use similar passwords or the same passwords that they have to other accounts. Make your Zoom password different than any other account you use. The easiest way to do that, because we are in the digital age, if you're going to try to remember passwords, you're fooling yourself and you're going to make things too simple and you're going to make them similar. Get a password app like LastPass or Keeper to get people out. Secondly, on Zoom, they've had these Zoom bombings where people jump into Zoom meetings. It's where you're publishing your invites. You're inviting people on social media or public forums, and these cyber criminals are just jerks that are, a lot of them have been spraying the person that's hosting. It's a teacher. They're spraying their address and their personal number that they've gotten off there. They think it's funny to push in some hate speech or put some pornography in front of kids. It's not funny, but it's up to you, the person that sets up the Zoom meeting, to make it secure. When you set up a Zoom meeting, you can publish it to the right places in personal text or email format to a small group. If you have to do it to a large group, do it in a forum that's restricted only to those people. And then Zoom added an add-on that you can click a button when you set it up before the meeting starts, and it's a waiting room where you have to click and allow each person in because you know who they are. So that's an additional step in security that they've added.
That's cool.
But a lot of it, I mean, everybody freaked out, and you should, because of the hack that came out about Zoom. But really the problem when we talk about Zoom bombing was just everybody saying, hey, jump into this. Teachers putting on this big Facebook page that anybody can access. And now I've got these, unethical people jumping into my Zoom.
Oh, surprise. Somebody else jumped in there that
Right.
I didn't mean to invite.
Right. And so that's what I wanted to cover today. I hope some of this was helpful for some of you. A little quick recap. When you're working from home, best option is to have your home or your work machine moved with all the proper security tools. If you don't have that, you need to make sure your home modem's updated. You need to have a quality router with updates with some firewall rules or some security on it. On your machine itself, you need to make sure all your applications and your Microsoft software is up to date. If you don't have a credible antivirus, WebRoot is a good one. If you want to purchase one, Sophos is a great one, and they have a free for residential. You can just Google Sophos free and download that. Those are some of the minimums.
Be sure you take off the old antivirus. If your machine came with a virus program on it, it's you didn't pay for it. It came with a 90 days or 120 days free. Uninstall that old stuff, because having two antivirus programs is sometimes worse than having a virus.
Yeah, they'll sit there and fight with each other and miss the virus coming in. That's great advice. The other thing is be mindful of what you're allowing these big technology companies or your browsers to keep. Don't check those boxes. If you have, guys, take the time just to go through your passwords and update them. And don't let those sites keep them. Jump into Google, into settings, and find where they're housing every time you've logged in and all your passwords there, because they're not encrypting that information. Shame on Google. I've been asked the same thing about your iPhone with the keychain. And yeah, it's password protected, and that keychain encrypts your passwords. That's a whole different technology. And third, Zoom. Be mindful when you set up Zoom or any other video conferencing. When you're setting up the meeting, go into settings and use the security features to monitor who's coming in those meetings. You got anything else for them, Jeff?
Google also has built-in two-factor authentication. So when I logged into a PC to look up that password manager, I logged onto a machine I hadn't logged on before. It sent a text to my cell phone that I had to approve before it let me in. Use two-factor authentication.
And what Jeff means there, it's also called multi-factor authentication. Hey, homework for today. Anybody sitting at home with some extra time, go into your browser and look up two-factor authentication for my accounts. Almost every account you use has the ability in settings for a second way to verify you're you, and it'll keep those cyber criminals out of your accounts with a simple username and password. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for spending some time with us.